Hello, my name is Marion Devine. I'm a senior researcher at the Conference Board, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Off the Shelf. And this is a book discussion series brought to you by the Conference Board. And today I'm delighted to be sitting down with Simon Brown, who is one of the authors of a really interesting new book called The Curious Advantage. And it's by Paul Ashcroft, Simon himself, and Garrick Jones. And it's looking at curiosity as the greatest driver of value in the digital age. And it came out a few months earlier in the height of the pandemic and is published by Amazon. So, Simon, welcome.
Thank you, Marion. Great to be here.
So this is a book that I think I personally found very, very intriguing and very interesting, and therefore I think particularly whetted my own curiosity as an individual. And I think that it's a very good read, and it's a very expansive look at what is curiosity. The book has got a wonderful blend of a perspective from practitioners in industry and also neuroscience. So that such a great treatment of curiosity. And I think that what's great about the book as well is that it looks at curiosity of why it's important for us as individuals and to organisations. And Simon will be bringing his experience as Chief Learning Officer at Novartis. And Simon has done a very significant new initiative at Novartis, a very, very significant global learning strategy that's been implemented into the organisation as having real impact on the culture of the organisation. And this book is structured in three sections. And the first is really getting to grips with what is curiosity, what does it mean for individuals, organisations and society, with some really interesting insights into kind of the meaning of curiosity, how it's defined, how we think about it, and lots of really interesting anecdotes as part of that. So it's very much positioning curiosity as something that is so integral to us as human beings. The second part is really saying, well, given that curiosity is hugely valuable to us as individuals, to us as in businesses and in society, how do we make it work for us? How do we really realize that value? What encourages curiosity? And I think that something that is very, very practical then is that the book then covers what it calls sailing the seven seas, which is a great pun, but it's seven elements that individuals and leaders and organizations can employ to get that real competitive advantage from a culture of curiosity. So Simon, well done for sailing the seven seas. I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. There was a bit of fun coming up with it. That our research was sort of falling into several buckets, and we suddenly realised that 5 of those buckets began with the letter C, which then got us into thinking, actually, can we make all 7 of them actually begin with C to give us the great pun of sailing the 7 seas, which is all about exploration, which is all about curiosity. So it links quite nicely.
It's fantastic. So, Simon, just to sort of start our discussion, what brought you to be thinking about curiosity in such a deep way, and to actually come to write this book? Can you tell us a little bit about your own personal journey here?
Yeah, absolutely. So curiosity was an element of the new culture that we've been putting into place at Novartis over the last few years. So we have a cultural aspiration around being inspired, curious and unbossed. And in my role in leading learning there, the work that myself and the team are doing is around how can we inspire curiosity. And there was a point, 2019, early in the year, where in the space of a couple of weeks, 2 people completely independently said to me, "Oh, you should write a book about the work that you're doing," and that got me thinking. Maybe there's something in it for 2 people to say that completely unconnected. And I was having dinner with Paul and Garrick, who I've known for many years and who have been part of that journey. And they'd written a book previously, so I was asking them, what was involved, and they offered to help. And that evolved what was an idea around sort of talking more specifically around learning at Novartis into a broader exploration of curiosity, and bringing the diversity that they both bring from their backgrounds and their experience into an overall exploration of what curiosity is, and as you say, the benefits it can have on individuals, organizations, society, and our model in there on how you can be more curious.
Yeah. And I think, I think it's particularly interesting that you've written this book at a time where, the context around us is very challenging, where we are in the middle of a global pandemic, deep levels of uncertainty, pressure that we're all facing. And you could sort of say that, yes, we all need to be curious to be learning, but you know what? This is a very difficult time to raise our heads above the ramparts. So how would you sort of sell the importance of curiosity, especially at a time of a very disruptive environment?
Yeah, so one of the key elements in the book we talk about is how curiosity we feel is the greatest driver of value in the digital age, and that's looking at the value of curiosity in the context of rapid acceleration and change. And we started on this journey before the pandemic, but I think the pandemic actually makes even stronger the case that you can't predict the future. The models that we took and used yesterday won't serve and help us in the future, that actually we all need to be curious because the answer is not clear, and actually it's through curiosity and exploration and experimentation that actually we'll find the way to navigate through that ambiguity. So we were thinking in writing the book that it was ambiguity in the sense of the change and disruption that's coming from digital, but actually we've seen another huge change driver creating ambiguity from the pandemic. So I think it's even more relevant in that context.
Yeah, and I think that you there are some interesting insights in the beginning of the book as well, about very much about curiosity in terms of how we function as humans and our brains. And I know that when we're under stress, people can actually close down, they can narrow their context, they can ignore really important information. But you've actually also said that our brains are wired to be curious, and that is it's actually a reward. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Garrick is the neuroscientist among the three of us, so he will be able to talk much more eloquently than I on this. But essentially, that when we're curious, it sparks the hippocampus in the brain, which releases dopamine, which then rewards us for that curiosity. And so, intrinsically in how we are created as humans, that reward is rewarded through that dopamine hit. So, there's a natural physiological reward if we are actually curious and learning something new.
Mm, yeah. And I think, in terms of, can you say a little bit more about why you've particularly talked about curiosity in the context of, you know, creating value in the digital age? Can you say a little bit more about how are you defining the digital age, and where does curiosity, how does it play out here?
Yeah, I think from our research and looking at many organisations, but also from what I've seen within Novartis, it's around if we look at the big challenges that organisations have today, it's not going to be a case of applying a best practice in many of these that has been in place for many years. It's going to be around navigating uncertainty and finding a new way of addressing problems that hadn't previously existed. And it's very much the case with digital and data science. Whether that's the discovery of new medicines, or whatever products that organizations and services organizations are working on, how to navigate in the uncertainty of technological advancement, globalization, now the pandemic, requires people to be experimenting, thinking differently, trying things out, and that is all powered by an intrinsic curiosity. So the case that we make in the book is that if you have curious people as an organization, that will put you in a stronger situation to be able to navigate that uncertainty, because people will be able to experiment, try things. They have a culture whereby it is safe to be able to fail and learn from that failure and find a better way, versus a culture where if there isn't that curiosity, people don't feel safe to try new things. They don't feel they can experiment, and therefore you'll be applying the same model over and over again. And the models of yesterday aren't the things that will make us successful in the future. And therefore, a more curious company will learn better ways faster, and before you know it, your history.
Yeah. I loved actually the fact that you also make the point that humour is a really important part of curiosity, because, certainly uh, sometimes when you can use humour in business meetings, it doesn't always necessarily go down well. But now, if I make a bad joke, I will know how to justify it. So I'm very happy about that. And I think, this brings us as well, when you're sort of saying about curiosity. Obviously, you felt that you had to write a book. Where do you think we are as individuals, as organisations, and even society? Are we valuing curiosity in the right way? What do you think are the barriers or the blockages from stopping people being curious in the way that you're describing?
So many different aspects. I'm not sure curiosity is appreciated for the value that it brings. So through our research, we saw a number of values that curiosity can bring at an individual level, and then at that organizational and societal level. So at an individual level, perhaps the most obvious one is around that curiosity powers your learning, but actually from a neurological perspective, it actually aids in the retention of learning. So there was a study by University of California that if you invoke curiosity at the point you're learning something, it actually aids retention and creates a stronger memory. There's also research that was published in Harvard Business Review around the value for an individual that curiosity brings in terms of communication skills. That if you're curious, it powers your communication skills, and you listen better, and therefore communicate more strongly. It reduces conflict within a team because you're curious about why other team members may be thinking something that conflicts with your views. And so how to better understand that is a sort of almost a superpower that curiosity brings. It gives you better decision making because you're thinking through sort of what the different alternatives are, what the implications of those are. And so that curiosity leads you to building or to making better decisions. And then finally, there was research by INSEAD as well that curiosity actually makes you more innovative as well. So at an individual level, it drives all of those traits, but those are all things then that are valuable for a company as well. That if you've got people who can communicate better, be more innovative, make better decisions, those are all traits that are very valuable then for a company.
Excellent. And I think before we move on to looking at it sort of from the organizational perspective, from the individual's perspective, I mean, you're very much, this whole sort of paradigm is saying that we can increase our own curiosity and our own ability to learn. What would you point to as sort of some of the most practical ways of doing this for us as individuals?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people sort of talk about the curiosity of children, and some of the research indicates that perhaps we're at our most curious when we're about 4 years old, and then sort of as we grow up, that curiosity leaves us. Often well-meaning, but as parents, we sort of say to our children, don't touch that, don't ask that, stop asking why, and we limit that curiosity. And so then it's how do you bring it back? And we believe that while it is something you're born with, it's also something that you can develop as a skill as well. And that's where we introduce in the book our 7 C's of curiosity model, which takes you through sort of 7 steps that can help to build your curiosity and help you to be more curious.
Yeah, and we will look at them in a minute. But we're going to take a short break now for some quick announcements, and we will be back in just a minute to continue this really interesting conversation with Simon Brown on his book, The Curious Advantage.
Looking for additional business insights in this subject area and beyond this podcast, go to tcb.org and explore our Human Capital Centre. Uncover a large array of products hosted by the Conference Board in focus areas like diversity and inclusion, talent management, and many others. Products include peer-to-peer networking events, expert briefings, publications, data and analysis, webcasts, videos, and blogs.
So I'd like to welcome you back to our conversation with Simon Brown, who is one of the authors of The Curious Advantage. And Simon is also Chief Learning Officer at Novartis. So welcome back to us. Simon, you were just sort of about to start saying a little bit more in terms of the sort of perhaps the core of your book when it comes to what you call sailing the seven seas of curiosity. And this is where you've identified 7 elements that individuals and leaders and organizations can put into practice to get what you're calling a culture of curiosity. I think it would be great. First of all, just tell us, why a culture of curiosity? Why not lots of curious individuals talking to lots of other curious individuals? Why are you actually saying it's got to be a sort of culture of curiosity?
Yeah, it's broader, I think, than individuals. So, and this is where I draw upon some of our experience within Novartis, as well as talking to other organisations. So, within Novartis, we have a culture around inspired, curious, and unbossed. And it takes sort of that culture to really drive the curiosity. So we looked at the role that leaders, for example, play in creating curiosity. What we saw that it was that a leader can either make or break whether there's curiosity within a team. And we looked at the engagement between a favourable leader and an unfavourable leader in a team. It had a positive impact if there was a favourable leader on engagement, but an 18-point deficit if there was an unfavourable leader on team engagement. And within engagement, the area it impacted most was curiosity. So the difference between a favourable manager and an unfavourable manager was actually 22 points of difference around curiosity.
Wow.
And that's sort of logical if we think about it, because if you've got a manager who isn't supporting you in asking questions, in pushing you to try things, if you do try something and it fails and there's penalties and you're penalised, you won't try things again. So you'll play it safe, you won't innovate, you won't challenge. And in most organizations today, it's the diversity of thinking, it's the experimentation and trying things that drives innovation and drives new ways of doing things. If you've got a culture where it's not safe for people to speak up, it's not safe for people to question and challenge and offer alternative views, it's not safe for people to experiment and try things, that's not going to be a long-term successful place to be.
Yeah. And with, obviously, we don't have time to go through, to navigate through the 7 seas of curiosity. And you've said, looking at the book, that it's context, community, curation, creativity, construction, criticality, confidence.
Yes.
Can you just, in a nutshell, tell us a little bit about what you're saying here? And is there any particular element that you would particularly, pull out, or are they all equally important?
Yeah, so it's really a process that one can follow to nurture curiosity. So starting with context is around, what is it I'm curious about and what's going on around me? Then who's the community that can help me to be more curious? Who are the experts, the guides, the people who can help me on that curiosity journey? Through that community and understanding the context, you get a lot of information. So the third C is around curation. Of how do you go from the broad down to the narrow of what information is going to be valuable for you. The fourth C is around creativity. So when you've got that information, how do you apply your own creativity? What are the questions that you ask? What's your own take that you bring to it? But asking questions is not going to get you anywhere unless you put it into action. So the fifth C is construction, which is where you test things out, you build things, you experiment. The creativity and construction together we talk about as the curiosity engine, because that's sort of at the heart of curiosity, of asking why, trying something, and then putting it into practice to experiment to see how it works. Once you've tried something, then the sixth C is criticality. So looking back at what worked, maybe what biases did you bring? So are you seeing the results you want to see? And it's confirmation bias, or what may have influenced what you're seeing. And through all of that, the research shows that builds your confidence. And so the final C, the seventh C, is confidence. But arguably that could also be the first C as well, because that confidence then allows you to be bolder in the questions, be bolder in your curiosity, and you end up with a sort of virtuous circle where you can then go deeper into whatever it is that you're curious about. So sort of following that process is a way to structure your curiosity rather than sort of a broad mindless curiosity. It can be a focused curiosity to actually guide you through particular steps.
And you do make the point about talking about curiosity for curious leaders and how important that is in authentic leadership and various ideas. And is it something that presumably for leaders there are some additional challenges, time, headspace, but is it even about being able to be open about what you don't know and to be aware to think through about stuff that you need to explore and look into?
Absolutely. So there's a sort of humility in recognizing that you don't know the answer and being curious in exploring other ways or different ways. That if you're not curious and you're taking a view that you have to know the answer to everything, that will limit the opportunities and become increasingly uncomfortable as a leader, because there's no way any of us can know all of the answers. That actually recognizing that there is no clear way forward and we need to be curious about the different approaches, and we need a diverse team that can help us in experimenting and testing and exploring what are the ways forward. Creating that environment for curiosity becomes a key element of leadership, and it does require a leader to recognize that no longer will one person have all of the answers and know always what the way forward is.
Thank you. And I think my sort of final set of sort of questions for you on your book is this brings us to you as an individual leader, as someone heading a global function in a large successful company. I think I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about how some of these ideas have been applied to what you've done at Novartis, but also maybe, what's your own experience of being curious? Is that something that you've had to deliberately work on for yourself?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, curiosity is a key part of the culture within Novartis. So, we've been working over the last few years across the learning team and the wider people in organization or HR team around how do we help to build that culture and inspire curiosity in people. So, there's many different elements to that around having access to great learning, but also addressing some of the barriers to curiosity around creating time and space for people to learn. So, we've set an aspiration that Novartis associates can spend 5% of their time or 100 hours a year on learning and being curious. We've events throughout the year, but in particular, we have a Curiosity Month in September where there's a whole month sort of focused around learning. And this year we had global webinars and lots of activities taking place to excite people around being curious and make them aware of the great resources that are out there, and the role that leaders and others play in supporting and driving that curiosity. So it's a critical part of the culture within the company, and it's a big part of our work as the learning team to be supporting and trying to create the resources, the space, remove the barriers for people to be able to spend time learning and being curious.
Excellent. So we're almost coming to the end of our podcast, and as I said, we can't hope to do justice to what is a really interesting book, The Curious Advantage. And Simon has also done a webcast with us at the conference board where he does go into a little bit more detail about Novartis's global learning strategy, and I do recommend that to you. Simon, at this point, we sort of home in on you now as an individual, as an author, and ask you about your own reading picks. So I sort of think it would be very interesting to know over Christmas. Did you totally switch off and read nothing, or did you have a few really good books on the go?
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm working through the audiobook for Fearless Leader, Amy Edmondson, so all around psychological safety. So that's the current one that I have on the go at the moment. So, and fantastic insights, and in fact we draw upon some of those within the book as well around what role a leader has in creating psychological safety in the team, and it links so well into curiosity as well. So that's my current audiobook that I have on the go.
And have you got an all-time favourite book? I mean, fiction as well as work-related, professionally related?
Oh, on the personal one, there's a series by Peter James. It's a detective series set in Brighton, where I used to live. Roy Grace is the detective in those. So each year he releases a different one, which tends to coincide with our summer holidays. So those are my normal fiction reading that I have beside the pool on holiday in the summer, of hearing him go through a lot of my old haunts in Brighton through the course of each of his novels. So that's Peter James there.
That sounds excellent, because I live actually quite close to Brighton. So thank you. I think I might have a little dip into them for myself. Well, thank you so much, Simon, for your time today. Thank you very much for sharing just a very small number of nuggets from The Curious Advantage, the greatest driver of value in the digital age. I think this book really has got some important messages, and I think to really understand and laud the value of curiosity at a time when perhaps it can be tempting to hunker down a little bit and not to confront the world around us, not to be curious, not to explore. I think this book is so timely. So thank you very much, Simon, for sharing it with us. Can you just tell us what's the best way for our listeners to get hold of this book?
Yeah, so it's available on Amazon and through leading book retailers. There's also a podcast that goes with it as well, available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and things, also called The Curious Advantage. And in there, you'll hear us chatting with many of the people that we interviewed for the book, and also subsequently other interesting people in the world of curiosity, not just from business, but also from other walks of life as well.
Fantastic. Well, I hope that you can all get hold of the book and enjoy it as much as I did. Simon, thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you everybody for listening in. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.